In the off season, or just any off time in general, in a pretty much stacked up NASCAR schedule, well, you gotta have something to watch when your racing fix is just not being met by no racing. And today, I want to give you 10 races that every NASCAR fan should watch this off season. Most, I will admit, are from the last 25 or so years, but I did try and sprinkle out at least a good amount that were during different eras. So let's get to it. Starting out, we have the 2003 Ford 400. This is a big one because it's the last race of the Winston Cup era. Many made a big deal about Kevin Harvick being the last full-time driver from this era to retire from NASCAR, and this is the last race of that era that kind of led up to it 20 years before. It also is the first Homestead finale on what we have now as the current configuration. This is symbolic of the end of an era in many ways and also the birth of a new one, but what really defines it is its iconic finish between two Winston Cup champions, one of which who was on the downturn and one of which who was ending what would be a comeback season for a year. Second up is the 2018 Overton's 400 at the Chicagoland Speedway. This is one race that I will always on every list tell people to watch because, in my opinion, it's a modern classic. It was great from beginning to end. The stage ends were good, the racing itself was good, strategy was good, those coming up the field through storylines that they made were pretty good, and it also was the first race of Dale Jr.'s NBC coverage, which of course leads to the famous slide job finish. There's not much more I can really say about this. I watched it in person, but having watched it multiple times since on the TV broadcast version, well, I gotta say it does actually live up to just how good the race was. Third is the 2009 Sylvania 300 at New Hampshire. See, the 2009 season to me in NASCAR is one that many will talk about having great moments, but overall was a really good season in the COT era that gets overshadowed by the later years of it. And this race is a huge example. Number one is that it had intense racing throughout the event. It looked like guys were just desperate to get ahead of anyone they could, and it was very tough racing, whether it was on the track or in the pits with strategy, especially towards the end. The chase drama was honestly really fun to watch when I rewatched the 09 season, even though it was 15 years ago as of the start of next year. And if you want no other reason to watch it that doesn't have to do at least with the new school, well, it was Mark Martin's final victory. Fourth up is the first all-time great moment in the Gen 6 era. In 2013, the Gen 6 era started out pretty bad, honestly. A terrible Daytona 500, a mediocre Phoenix race, and a Las Vegas race whose finish was about the only good merit. But this was a great race from start to finish, and the racing itself was Auto Club starting out its complete prime. And by the way, RIP to Auto Club. The legendary finish is what most people will look at, but it wasn't just the last lap, it was the last 10 or so laps after the final restart. This was the best that we would get in the Gen 6 era when it came to just honestly all around racing and finishes with the high horsepower and all. If you're missing all of that, definitely watch this race. Ending off the first half of this list is the end of the high horsepower era in the Gen 6 time, and that was the 2014 Ford EcoBoost 400, another race on this list for Homestead. This was the first and, in my opinion, best of the Final Four finale races, and it was the first finale race when it came to the elimination playoffs. And in my opinion, there were many reasons this race was great. Obviously, the racing itself. Homestead has been an amazing track through the years and deserves more than just a nondescript playoff race. But it actually was a compelling battle between the final four, as all four of them ran up front, but weren't invincible or infallible in any way. Why is that? Well, non-championship guys truly did challenge them throughout the night. Matt Kenseth and Dale Jr. were up in the top 5 and 10, racing them all race long, and Jeff Gordon honestly had the best car out there and should have won the race. It's amazing to see 10 years later how much has changed, both in the coverage as well in who's on track and the driving in general. Number 6 is the 1999 Trans-South Financial 400 at Darlington. This is the only rain-shortened race that's on this list because the threat of rain was there all race long. This was before the air tightened, before modern jet dryers, and before lights at Darlington. So darkness really was an issue. And you can see from lap 1, the wick was turned up to 11. It builds up over time, over and over and over again, with every compounding moment of this race, ending with an incredible finish that has a crash basically end the race because, well, they had them racing still in the rain as the TV guys had shown. And seeing how the winner of this race won it, well, you're just going to have to watch. Now, I'm not going to lie. Number 7, in my opinion, is a terrible race, and that is the 2008 Brickyard 400. But there's a reason I want people to watch this race. This was one of the worst races in NASCAR history. It was a disaster. Tires were blowing up left and right. NASCAR had to throw different competition cautions every 10 laps because of it to protect the drivers and teams from themselves. You were basically waiting for the next person to be basically shot out of the race. And in my opinion, it shows what fans need to learn and understand about this race and why the Brickyard 400 fell the way it did. This was right at the end of its peak. 250,000 people were tuning in at the track, and there were probably about 6 to 7 million more watching at home on TV. And from this moment on, it continued to fall, and you need to see that first reason. Because this was the Rubicon being crossed, and, well, honestly, it's an entertaining disaster in the fact that it continues to get worse. But I do think that with the Brickyard 400 coming back, fans need to understand what started the march towards its removal. Number 8 is the 2011 Budweiser Shootout. Now, this is one for those who may have time constraints. Maybe you have an hour and a half to watch a race, and you can push it a little bit, so this is something you can turn on, a shorter race. This was the first full race that used tandem drafting throughout instead of the main pack as drafting. And in it, there was some merit to it, at least, in good moments. There were crazy moments like Kyle Busch's restart and different crashes, and a controversial finish. And honestly, while I prefer the pack over tandem racing, with that being said, so I would say give it a shot and see something, especially if you're a new fan, that you probably have never seen before. Now for number 9, we're going to kind of go out there and be the NASCAR version of being the artsy person that says you need to watch this for its significance altogether, and that's the only reason why. And that is the 1951 highlight reel from Detroit. It is only 3 minutes. It's on the NASCAR Classics channel, or at least on the main website, and it's something that's really easy to watch. You can watch it on a work break, and there's a reason why I put this here, and it's because it shows both how NASCAR was in the early years and how it was represented in media. This is the oldest media that is on the NASCAR Classics site, and it shows how far the sport has come, from guys who were racing actual stock cars on a dirt track more than likely, to what we have today of professional race car drivers. These drivers were the pioneers of this sport, and while there aren't too many of them named or shown, they need to be remembered for what they helped be built upon. These drivers are the reason we see the great tracks, great racing, great personalities that we have today, and in my opinion, you need to watch it. Now, the last race that I think many should watch is the 2006 Daytona 500. Listen, it's a list of races you need to watch from the past. It's a Gen 4 super speedway race. You knew at least one of these was going to be on here. But this race also has historical significance. First off, it was the most watched race in NASCAR history by a wide margin. But honestly, if you just watched it based on the production as well as what was on the track in general, you would kind of wonder why. This race was a fog race. The track was enveloped by fog, so because of this, most of the shots had to be up close or down low, and a lot of them had condensation on them. There was good racing throughout it, too. It was a Gen 4 superspeedway race, so of course there was. And there was a great rivalry built with Tony Stewart and Matt Kenseth going at it before Jimmy Johnson would get his first Daytona 500 victory. And there you go. Those are 10 races that you should probably watch this offseason or just whenever you have time or NASCAR isn't on. Now I want to hear from you. What are some NASCAR races that you think people should watch? Let me know down in the comments below. Are they new ones, old ones, or are they just somewhere in between? Just let me know. And while you're at it, leave a like in this video, share this video, and subscribe to this channel for more great NASCAR content. Thank you so much to all of my channel members for your continued support. And until next time, have a good one.